Welcome to Peace Conversation. I'm TK Nakagaki, the president of the Heiwa Peace and Reconciliation Foundation, New York, and I'm your host, and I hope you enjoy this program. This program is meant to bring awareness of the 75th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki this year, the August 6th and August 9th. And I'm inviting some guests to come to join, and so they're basically the peace workers, the people who create the peace in our world. And today I have Dr. Reverend Doctor, I don't know which way, Reverend Doctor, sorry, Chloe Breyer, and she's the executive director of the Interfaith Center of New York. And actually, I think I've known her for a long time now, so I can't think how many years I've known you, but I'm very grateful that you're able to join us. And I'm enjoying me here today, because it is, what do you call it, I know you're very busy, and especially after pandemic, and, the coronavirus and so forth, it's busiest time. But at the same time, it's always grateful that you're able to support us many ways, like if you don't mind, introduce yourself briefly or whatever the way you like, and so we start the conversation now. Then, of course, you have a coffee and tea, so if you feel you need to drink, then you can. Cheers to. Welcome.
Cheers. Well, first of all, thank you, Reverend TK, for keeping the flame of peace alive in New York City, as you have done for these so many years, not just with the interfaith ceremony around this anniversary and the years before, but also the floating lanterns ceremony that you arranged after 9/11, and all the work that you've done for peace in our city. As you said, I direct the Interfaith Center of New York. Well, I will remind you, you are an honorary board member, in case you had forgotten.
Oh, yeah.
And I want also to share that I'm an Episcopal Priest here in the Diocese of New York, and have a associate position at a church called St. Philip's in Harlem. And really, I think I began my own journey working on peace just a few years after my ordination, where back in 2000 was my ordination to the priesthood, and what happened the following year, but 9/11.
Oh,
and that was just a real wake-up call, for all of us. And I think the interfaith work, which I had been doing for a very, had had an interest in for quite a long time, really took on a degree of urgency after 9/11.
No.
When, we had different chaplains from different traditions, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, working down at ground zero and trying to be a ministry of presence to all those men and women who were doing the cleanup work for 9 months that followed in that, absolutely, really, really tragic situation. And we stood together as a city, we stood together as faith leaders, and I think that was one kind of eye-opening way in which we were acting as peacemakers as well as ordained people in our respective tradition. I think that was a really strong way. And the other thing that came out of that tragedy was the interfaith efforts to rebuild a mosque in Afghanistan that came out of our diocese, and the Afghan community in Flushing, New York, and also 9/11 Families for Peaceful Tomorrows, which I know have been, they've been a wonderful partner to us. They've been a great partner to you, as I recall. I remember maybe perhaps on the 5th anniversary when you helped bring ambassadors and peacemakers over from Japan. Do you recall that?
Yeah, but
when we
also
stood at, I think it was when you were at the Buddhist church.
Right, they participated in the
right?
Hiroshima Nagasaki memorial So the 9/11 family came, and then we just they ring the bells, and so it's like a great exchange with the 9/11 and then the Hiroshima Nagasaki people. So that was very.
That is exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah. So no, that's really like a ground zero, because Hiroshima was ground zero too, right? The Nagasaki ground zero.
Yes.
So this is called the Manhattan ground zero. Kind of connection was built up that way.
Right.
And so yeah.
Right.
And then that was a really nice. I mean, for me, I was moved by the people's get together, helping each other. The same difficulties that they experience. I mean, not the same, but yet that kind of difficulty they experience.
Have that bond between them. I
Right.
mean, because as I recall, each person had lost somebody, that they loved.
Yeah. And then actually we have a little different, but the one time I did have something together with a Holocaust survivor, and then the Hiroshima survivor met, and then we have a little dialogue before. But that was just part of my New York Theological Seminary's project. But then we just do it. But then at that time was also, I mean, once Hibakusha, the survivor of the atomic bomb, and then the Holocaust survivor met, they just naturally hug each other, and then show how difficult experience that you went through, and so that become like a bond just right there. So that was actually the very moving moment for me too. Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah. So interface itself, yeah. Since you're working for the interface part a lot, but so the 9/11 make you to continue for the interface work, or you saw some of the values of it? Because it is a big changes at that time. Before the interface, of course, we did the interface too, but yet after that 9/11, it became really strong importance of the interface.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, the Interfaith Center of New York, we've mostly focused on New York City,
Right.
and there are all sorts of different things that threaten the peace when it comes to interfaith relations and just the city generally. And I can remember one thing we were very involved with was the backlash against Muslim New Yorkers that followed 9/11, when so much funding and anti-terrorism went to the NYPD, and there was the question of the spying on mosques that happened, and a real sort of violation of what we now look back and say it was clearly a violation of their religious liberty and their religious freedom. But at the time, it was not a clear question at all. It took a lot of lawsuits, and you have to ask yourself, well, is a lawsuit a peaceful thing? Well, sometimes if the purpose of the lawsuit is to kind of protect people's freedom, it actually can be, and in a way that's sort of powerful and systemic. And so, I think we have at our disposal many tools which, depending on how they're used, can be ways to pursue peace. Right. And for us at the Interfaith Center, people's rights to be able to practice their religion freely without fear of retaliation, without fear for their, for their persons. Right. Is a very important thing of being a dignified human being.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not everyone is religious, and not everyone, certainly there's a lot of different religious traditions, but the right to be able to do that is part of what makes us, gives us dignity. And I think that's so important to protect as a component of peace.
Yeah, because I remember one point of the, first after 9/11, I think 3 days or so later, they have St. Bart. There's
St. Bart's?
There's a ceremony of the because that's a UN thing. So they decide to have a ceremony, interfaith ceremony, and then after that there's a conference call, and then the interfaith leaders gather, and then they they declare each one to protect
the press conference.
Yeah,
right?
press conference to protect the Muslim people. And so we just all the other traditions together to protect their rights and so forth. And that was actually, I mean, it's really the first gathering. I mean, because when you're driving the Manhattan,
you're right. You're absolutely right.
Coronavirus.
Exactly
After the
right.
coronavirus, there's nobody, in the city. So we just drove through, and then they have a ceremony at the Saint Bart Church. And then, so that was actually one of the things that Interfaith can do together to protect each other's rights of the practice of revision.
Yes, that's such an important, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because when there's basically what we're showing when we come together and stand sort of shoulder to shoulder, people, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, and so forth, when we stand together like that, the message that we're giving is that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Right.
It's not just the business of Buddhists to stand up for their fellow Buddhists. It's actually even more important for non-Buddhists to stand up when somebody who's Buddhist is attacked because of their religious identity. So that's another super important tool, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So that was a good part as well. And then, so I think for me also, interface itself is the way to create a peace too. Because encourage a dialogue, encourage to meet different. The sort of the barrier could be, their own religion has their own way of thinking, but then the other religion may have a different ways than how you communicate each other and so forth. So that's, for me, it's also challenging. And then that's something that interfaith can bring to the peace, I think. So now I just wonder whether, since this is the 75th anniversary of Hiroshima Nagasaki, I mean, that's one of the reasons I have this program. But any particular thoughts or thinking that you may have on 75th? Do you have any thoughts on it? I just wanted to ask you.
I do. I think that at this time when our president is trying to, get rid of nuclear treaties, it's, the insanity of that is really beyond belief. And the anniversary, I mean, it's so important to remember what happened. And in our country, I feel there are a lot of forces trying to help us forget, forget what happened, forget that this was our doing, that we, perpetrated one of the great tragedies of modern time, and that, hundreds of thousands of people that have continued to suffer bearing the marks of the attacks in their DNA. And how, so I don't think it's been more important, that we've got to make a big deal about this and remind Americans and the world that this cannot happen again at a time when there's just a lot of instability. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, it's just a little scary in a way that right now the world itself, and instead of well, I mean, I guess,
and I think that there's a kind of learning that to be taken out of this. I think that Japan has I've worked with Betty Reardon, who is a great peace education pioneer, and she is, she has her colleagues that are in Japan and struggling themselves to kind of, continue to help create a generation of people, and future generations that remember the importance of peace as a day-to-day practice, as well as a geopolitical thing to be strived for. So we got to keep it going.
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah, definitely. Because once stopped, it seems just things are falling sometimes too. So, but yeah. So what do you think is like? Do you have any thoughts like what would be the key parts to be kept, to make the peace going, or nurture the peace or create the peace?
Well, I think getting rid of nuclear weapons, or getting on a path towards reducing nuclear weapons, is a huge step that needs to be taken. And who knew that we would be going in the wrong direction in 2020 right now? So that's one thing. I do think that there is, there's the practice of peace as we kind of understand it in our work and day-to-day. If we're lucky enough to have a kind of vocation that enables us to put our efforts towards that, be it interfaith work or any other kind of work, again, we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other on that. And then I think on the personal level, there's no question that we have to not lose track of our own sort of peace practice, whether it's like me, and I try to get 15 minutes in the morning of prayer and meditation, and sometimes I am able to do it, sometimes I fail at getting the time to do it, but I am always striving to do that and making that kind of part of who I am. And I think that's we now know enough about the connection between the personal and the political that you can't simply ignore the need for a kind of peaceful, or at least a striving for a peaceful outlook. I think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whose birthday it was quite recently, and what he has to teach us about meditation and the impact that it has on our general outlook and our health. And I think, there are just some things that you can't do that much about. There's some things that you can, but the more you stew over the things that you can't do anything about, it doesn't help anyone, least of all yourself. And he has kind of made that case, as of many, many others, but establishing the connection between your personal peacefulness and the ability to be an outward-looking and effective person in the world is also important. And I think we just keep going on that too.
Because sometimes I feel like I need mind is also need a training, like exercise, because people do the exercise for the physical, but we don't do exercise much for the mind, in a way, like sitting and meditating. That's a kind of a practice of mind too, or how you control I have anger now, but how you control and so forth. I mean, that's sort of like a thing that seems like for me it's missing somehow. We do maybe have a peaceful education could be including that kind of training of the mind. But
no, that's of course.
So it's I mean it's so that's why one of the reasons that Hewa Foundation is self-formed for the based upon the proactive, which means really creating peace within yourself. Then that it can be expanded, and then each one can find their own way to bring the peace. And so I mean, everybody cannot do the same way, but yet each one has the way to work on. So this is one of the, I mean, this program itself is also the same reason. I wanted to interview anybody. I mean, it's not, sometimes some are well known, some are, nobody know, but yet they're doing a peaceful, work. So that each one has their own unique way, whether they recognize or not, they do their own paths too. So which was kind of beauty of that program, I'm hoping. So I mean, so the same way. So
hats off to you, TK. It's not a small effort.
but it's so that's why I'm very grateful that you're able to be here and then share your experience too. So I mean, if you wanted to share any experience that you feel it's a very important experience for you to maybe go to the peace and so forth. Maybe, I mean, it doesn't have to be peace too, but any important experience in your life that make you do things the way you do now would be great to know. If it's a secret, you don't have to. but
No.
helpful.
I do think that, I mean, actually, going back to 9/11, it was really doing the funeral of, or it wasn't even a funeral, it was a memorial service for a man, who had passed away, who was in, I think, one of the second tower, and his fiance was the person who I met with and organized the memorial service while I was at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. And I remember her saying, he can't have died in vain. He just can't have. There's got to be a greater awareness that comes out of this. And that to me was like, it was like a sort of instruction manual. I mean, first it was true, but then like the axis of evil speech happened, and it was clear that our government wasn't necessarily going to take that, awareness that she was. So it sort of became like a personal mission. Like, what can we do, just on a personal level, perhaps, to make this true for her fiance, because I think it was right. And so that was where the kind of rebuilding the mosque in Afghanistan came from, the interfaith work that I've done at the Interfaith Center. It was really out of her, out of her question and sense that it's up to us to make things not in vain, as it were. Right. It's up to us, the living, to do that.
Then that's also the part that I feel at that time also, the way that then do the to the memorial was a kind of noisy or something. So for me, I wanted to have a little more quiet and so forth, reflective. That's why we started the floating lantern ceremony.
And one of the things I remember about those extraordinary, the floating lantern ceremony, is the way that we had this kind of spontaneous community kind of happen just on that pier. If you had brought in, so many wonderful, I think we helped with the prayer givers, and then there was the kayakers, and then there was I remember at one point there was like the Sikh coalition, the United Sikhs brought in a massive amount of, lentils and the langar tradition of feeding people, and they were this was this extraordinary kind of spontaneous community. That was one of the really strong memories I have of those services.
That was very surprisingly great. So each one bring their own thing.
It was, because it just you think of services often as performative, like we are performing something, but there was something about that in which community was created. There was enough kind of interaction and maybe it was just the beauty of the evening, or seeing those candles, or the acts of writing prayers on them. That engaged people in a way that made it very authentic.
Yeah, people write the peace message on the lanterns too.
Yes,
that's also, that was nice program for the children come and the adults come, everybody came. So that was nice.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So, but also maybe in a way the tragedy always brings people together, in a way. So I wonder, coronavirus now, I don't know what kind of community can we bring it after, everybody experienced this, and then how, maybe this tragedy, maybe for the human beings at least, we can bring our society and so forth too. But at least, going back to the Hiroshima and so forth, also, by this, not just the tragedy happened, but then to bring the peace and then bring the kind of people together. And that's always something, although one side is very tragic and sad, but yet also the other side, that because of that tragic, that people bring is something different values, and that's one thing, I guess, transformation. Tragedy become the way to bring the peace, and those are actually for me, it's a beauty of this kind of memorial as well, and remembering, but at the same time, it's not just the past that we are staying there, but then the knowing the past, and then the just thinking in the present, and then going to the future too. So that's for me, that's what's important. But anyway, I forgot when did I start it. So are we still continue, or shall we stop now? But if you wanted to share any thoughts to the viewers in the end, please do.
No, I was going to say that, that to your point about COVID is that one thing that we ended up doing was partnering with some different faith organizations and Lincoln Center and some artists to really do because people weren't able to gather often at funerals because of the social distancing. We were able. We worked on having the names of those people who had died. Scrolling across the screen where we had like a really great artist performing as a way of honoring them. So that was the only other thing I was going to mention. So
yeah.
But yeah, well, good. Well, thank you.
So anyway,
thank you so much, TK.
Thank you. Very end is a telephone call, so maybe it's like okay.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
it's the stop to talk to somebody else. But anyway, thank you again. Thank you so much. Okay, have a good day.
All right.
Good weekend.
You too. Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.